Hello everybody, my name is Zach and welcome to the Dino Rabbit Format YouTube channel. So today we're going to begin with the first of our introductory series to the Big Four meta decks of the March 2012 TCG format. So we are going to begin with Dino Rabbit. So Dino Rabbit is a control deck that can be played in one of two, maybe three ways. The way that we'll be profiling today is the Macro Cosmos variant. It has positive matchups against the other three meta decks, such as Windup, Inzektor, and Chaos Dragons, as the Macro Cosmo will force key cards to get banished instead of going to the graveyard in the case of any Windup card for Windup Rat, any Inzektor, because they're all graveyard effects, and then of course for Chaos Dragons, you can make them banish their key light and dark monsters to prevent them from summoning, though that doesn't necessarily work all the time, but it is decent to hold them off for a little bit. The second variation of Dino Rabbit you can play is just a heavy turbo rabbit build. I've seen it around a few times. You can play cards like Gold Sark to try to turbo into turn one rabbit by making Leviair in order to spam out a rabbit. That variant's probably the least popular of the three rabbit variants, but I felt like it should be mentioned. And the third and final variant is just pure Dino Rabbit with hand traps. Hand traps tend to just be like either two copies of like Maxi or Effect Veiler and then a copy of Gores. That's really the only difference. You don't play Macro, obviously, in that build, because Macro does contradict the hand traps. Alright, so let's get into the card by card for this main deck. So we're going to begin this profile with the three copies of Rescue Rabbit. Rescue Rabbit is the star of the deck. Rescue Rabbit was released in Photon Shockwave, the second set of the Xyz era. Dino Rabbit became a deck immediately. People knew because of the release of the Evil Czar cards like Galagia and Dolka. For those of you who don't know, Rescue Rabbit lets you banish it to summon 2 level 4 monsters with the same name from your deck, which we'll get into very quickly. So we have the 3 copies of Sabersaurus and the 3 copies of the Kabuzuls. Not much explanation needed here. Just know, why are we playing like these two specifically? They have the highest attack of the vanilla dinosaurs. Like, that's literally the only reason. And that is the Rabbit engine. It's very solid. It gets the job done. So a card that not all decks played during the format, but I think in hindsight you have to play this card, is 3 copies of Jirak Gwaiba. Jirak Gwaiba is a 1700 fire dinosaur. But sure, he's a dinosaur, okay. But why does it matter? When he destroys an opponent's monster by battle, he'll summon another copy of himself from your deck. He can summon any Jirak, but it's Jirax. So, like, other than maybe, like, Dino, I'm just thinking of, like, Jirak cards that I've seen play with in this format other than Gwaiba. Like, we can talk about those later. Yeah, so I think through Jirak Gwaiba is such a powerful card. You can catch so many decks off guard as well. If they're not expecting to, or even if they know they're playing Rabbit, they might not expect the Gwaiba. So the next 3 cards, we play the Tour Guide engine of the 3 Tour Guide and the Singleton copy of Sangan. Tour Guide is really there for your rank 3 toolbox. Sangan is great in this deck, isn't some others, because we only have the Rabbits, another copy of Tour Guide, and then 1 other monster in the monster lineup, which we'll talk about momentarily. But Tour Guide is great. It lets you access your rank 3 toolbox, and the rank 3s in this format are very good. So we play 1 Grand Mole. Grand Mole is there to help out the Inzektor save zone loop thing. Though that's not as popular in modern March 2012, it was a popular deck concept back then. It's also just helped you bounce problematic monsters like Archlord Christio, which can really shut off this deck. And it helps you out anything you can't specifically hit over, which also helps this deck. Because the biggest monster we will summon in this deck is 2500 attack. No, it's 3k, but that's a rank 3. And then the last monster in the main deck is the single copy of the Thunder King Ryo. I'm just playing it as a main decked tech for windup, because a windup really likes to search a lot. This card's also good against just many of the rogue decks, especially heroes, which we will talk about in the near future. Alright, so now we're going to hop into the spell lineup. We're going to start with the 3 copies of Forbidden Lance. This card is so versatile in this format. It could be used offensively and defensively. One of my favorite things about that card is it makes Gwaiba really good, and it can protect your tour guides or your rabbits. It is just incredibly versatile with these cards. And it can also protect your bigger, your boss monsters. So if you know your opponent might be playing like a deck that struggles with a Logia, you can summon it in defense mode and then lance it. Say if they try to like Dark Hole, so you don't lose the negate. And the attack decrease doesn't matter for a deck like, I don't know, Inzektor, for example, because they don't have a monster that can normally hit over the Logia. This is a format where MST is at 3, so we are playing the 3 copies of MST. You're going to see this pattern pretty common in the format. I'm not going to go too in-depth on it. It was really good with the increase in back row play in this format as well. So a lot of decks this format will play some sort of like removal spells. And since Dino Rabbit does sometimes struggle with adding big monsters, we're playing the 2 Soul Taker. Before people, who play other formats go, well, why not like Smashing Ground? So there's 2 important cards in this format called Light Pulsar Dragon, as well as Elemental Hero The Shining. Those cards have effects that will make your opponent gain different advantages. So Soul Taker destroys 1 face-up monster on the field. So that's cool. So it's like already better than Smashing Ground, because it doesn't have like you have to hit that one clause. Your opponent then gains 1,000 life points. And why that text is really important, it makes the Shining and the Light Pulsar Dragon miss timing. I'm going to bring that up quite a bit because I think Soul Taker is such a fantastic card. Someone send me secrets, they're too much money. Under the 1-ofs, we have a single Book of Moon. Just another versatile spell. And then we have this format's Trinity. So if you play Goat, you have Pedigree, Charity, and Duo. In this format, you have Reborn, Dark Hole, and Heavy Storm. Blow out against back row, blow your opponent's monsters up, Reborn a key card. Now we'll get into the trap lineup, and we will begin with 2 copies of Macro Cosmos. Macro Cosmos is a trap that can be, funny enough, solemn warninged, so if your opponent knows that, they will solemn warning this, because as soon as this card resolves, you can summon a Helios, the primordial being, from your deck. For those of you who probably don't know what that card is, it's like some old-ass card from the Yu-Gi-Oh! GX anime that Banner used. Or if you're an OCG fan, I don't know his name, so... Or sub fan, sorry. But yeah, this card is just so integral in this deck. It makes all the cards go to the banished instead of the graveyard. And it just becomes really hard for decks to deal with. So in like Goat, you have a common battle trap like Sakuretsu Armor. In this format, you have D-Prison. Not every deck is going to opt to play D-Prison. But Dino Rabbit's one of those decks because Dino Rabbit, a lot of the time in playing, you don't have to make this giant push immediately because of your back row. And this just helps that thing. So if you're just sitting on like maybe a Gwaiba or a Vanilla, you can just D-Prison a Xyz monster your opponent summons. Next 2, we have the double Bottomless Trap Hole. Bottomless is just a staple in this format. A lot of decks play this card. No questions asked. It just gets rid of any problem you want. On to the probably the most set of staples trap cards in the format with the 2 Torrential. Torrential had just come back to 2 at the beginning of this format. And since we are playing the post-YCS Chicago format, there's no turn player priority. If you watch the introduction video, you do know that. So yeah, this is such a powerful card. It just nukes fields. It's wonderful. On to the other staple, we have the 2 Solemn Warning and the Solemn Judgment. Solemn Brigade is alive and well, semi-limited and limited. Most decks will opt to play a quantity of these cards. So like if you're looking at trap lineups, you're going to see a lot of decks playing a quantity of these 3 cards. So yeah. And then the last trap in this deck is a single Starlight Road. You play a lot of back row, so your deck is pretty susceptible to Heavy Storm. And just summoning a Stardust and negating that is really cool. Alright, so now getting into the extra deck, we're going to take a look. My extra deck is extremely standard, so we'll quickly get into that. We'll start off with the 2 copies of Evil Tsar Lagia and the 2 copies of Evil Tsar Dolka. For common man's terms, this is Solemn Judgment on legs, and this is Solemn Strike on legs. If you're a player who hasn't played in the time of Solemn Strike, it's another no, but for monster effects. Yeah, these 2 cards are very key. Most turn 1 boards, if you are going the rabbit route, will end on a Lagia, in attack or defense. Just remember, if you're playing against a deck that you know is playing a lot of like spell trap removal, and you have like a lance, set that and just put this in defense so you can protect it and still have your negate. Dolka, these cards are just good. Most times you will try to make the Lagia first, but against a couple of specific decks, which you might see like Agents, you probably want to see this because Agents have about 19 different card monster effects that happen a turn, though they're not like the best deck. The next 2 Xyz, we play the Utopia and the Utopia Ray. Utopia is just good because it's your biggest rank 4 in this deck. And then Utopia Ray's there for the comeback ability. So for those of you who don't know, if your life points are 1,000 or less, you can detach an Xyz material from this card, and it gains 500 attack, and 1 monster your opponent control will lose 500. So it's just a solid, or lose 1,000, sorry. It's a really solid comeback card. It doesn't come up all the time, but it has been very good in, just playing. The next rank 4 is the single Maestro, the Symphony Djinn. This card's like okay. It's just another like position changer. So for those of you who don't know, you detach material and target a face up attack position monster, change it to face down defense position. So yeah, and then it has a effect that is irrelevant to this card because there's like a whole Djinn Xyz line. Next card is Photon Papal Imperative. This is another battle position changer. This card's actually really good. So it just forces a defense position monster to attack, and it loses 600, which can be very relevant in a very grind game. And the last rank 4 in this one is the single Steel Swarm Roach. Steel Swarm Roach is a monster that when a level 5 or higher summon, you can detach material and negate the summon. So it's really good. It's very integral against Chaos Dragons sometimes. It's also solid against Hieratics and just other random offshoot rogue decks. On to the rank 3s. We'll begin with probably the best one, maybe, of Wind-Up Zenmaines. If you weren't playing them, this was like $100+ card on release. Secret Rare from Photon Shockwave. For those of you who don't know, when it's face up on the field, when it's destroyed detached material, it's not destroyed, and then you get to pop card at the end phase. This is a wall up card for sure. Next we have the number 17 Leviathan Dragon. He just gets big. Not much else to say about him. He's just going to be a big beater for you. Next we have the Temp Tempo. Temp Tempo is really good. It lets your opponent lose their Xyz material, so it's really neat. Probably the most underrated card in the extra deck, or the best card in the extra deck that we just don't kind of call the best card in the extra deck. We have Leviair the Sea Dragon. For those of you who don't know, Leviair, you can detach material, target a banished card, the monster that is level 4 or lower, and summon it. So in the Dino Rabbit mirror match, if you are in a grind game and you don't have a rabbit, you can make a Leviair, take their damn rabbit, make a big boy. The last rank 3 is Acid Golem. It just gives us an out to problematic big monsters. I don't like making it a ton of the time, but if you need it, it is there. And then the last extra deck card is the Stardust, so we can resolve the Starlight Road. And yeah, that is it for this Dino Rabbit deck profile. I hope you did enjoy. If you have any suggestions for the list, be sure to let me know in the comment section below. Next time, we will be taking a look at the Wind Up Hand Loop deck, where I will be explaining cards and then hopefully professionally going over the basic hand loop combo so you guys can get used to it. Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.